Trivium is finally set to release their new album In Waves on Roadrunner Records this fall, but in the time between the release of their last album, 2008's Shogun, the band had to get used to a new drummer. They parted ways with drummer Travis Smith last year, who said he wasn't going to tour with the band due to personal issues.
Everybody's going to look back on it, on the whole record, and feel that, it's all put 100% into it.
Or if that's doing something like we did with In Waves, and basically completely restructure the way a metal band can look like. Whether the video's having no performance, the live DVD with it having no crowd, there being no color, really, it's all black, white, gray. It's little things like that, how we've always just done what we wanted.
Here is the lineup for this year's Rockstar Energy Drink Mayhem Festival. Disturbed, Megadeth, Machine Head, In Flames, Trivium.
One thing always never gets done the way you want it to. It's like the artwork or the first video, you're like, oh man, that wasn't good enough. But we just knew this time, we're 5 albums in, we have to nail this one. Start to finish, it has to be perfect. So anyone that's been into Trivium, I think you will be more than pleasantly surprised by all the songs on it.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to our Trivium retrospective on Renegade Jukebox on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike, and joining me, as always, is the Super Saiyan Death Metal God himself, Nick.
And wives! And wives! There was nothing else I could growl at the beginning other than that.
Yeah, that was the perfect way to kick off the episode of our retrospective where we're talking about their 5th studio album, In Waves.
So, this is where Nick goes on, where did we leave off on last time segment? So, I'm just going to jump straight off of the 2009 Mayhem Fest we mentioned in the last episode and just how big of a critical and sizable commercial hit for Roadrunner that album was. So, getting towards the end of the Mayhem Fest tour, Travis Smith ultimately decides to sit out the next tour, and then that ultimately leads to him leaving the band or being fired. We've never really been given a concrete answer on what happened to Travis.
Can we call it quiet quitting?
Maybe, because I did want to mention this in the Shogun episode, but I felt like it tied in better here, because Matt Heafy will always chalk it up to a chemistry issue in the band. When he was in the band, I hear him say that in interviews sometimes when discussing Travis leaving. But if you go watch that making of doc on the deluxe edition of Shogun, you could really tell he, in particular, did not want to go and do the bonus tracks, to go back and re-record those. He did not want to do them. So, who ultimately knows in the end? But this is where we get to our first major lineup change in the band, where Nick Augusto, a fellow Nick, obviously, their drum tech, winds up filling in for their tour they did with Chimera and Whitechapel, which, man, I wish I was 18 at the time and could have seen that tour, because it would have been amazing.
Seriously, that is a killer lineup there.
Yeah, man, like Whitechapel fresh off of This Is Exile, Chimera with pretty much the classic lineup intact, like that would have been killer to see open for Trivium promoting Shogun. But this is basically where we get into how In Waves starts to get developed, where they started writing songs for this album back in 2009. So it was announced through, do you remember when Artisan News was a thing on YouTube?
Barely.
That would be a YouTube channel I'd frequent for music news. It'd be mainly from like the particularly big bands, so like your Metallica, Korn, Slipknot, Machine Head, maybe Megadeth, that kind of a deal, but it'd mainly focus on like bigger metal bands. But that's how I would know that Trivium were working on new music. And just at the time, another big change behind the scenes, Matt Heafy is recently married at this point, and she introduces him to this one artist named John Paul Douglas. Why does he factor into this, you might ask? So he is who gets Matt more into art, more into the artistic side of things, because his wife Ashley is also an artist. She's also done some artwork for the band over the year, mainly on like later records and everything, the more minimalist kind of art on like The Sin in the Sentence.
Oh.
But she introduces Matt to this guy, John Paul Douglas, and he starts introducing him to like all of these art movies and these big artistic directors. So he shows him Inception by Christopher Nolan, David Lynch movies, and Lars von Trier, specifically the movie Antichrist, which more on that movie later in the track listing. But he also was getting like huge into indie rock during this time period. I know on like, I don't know which website it was, but he was doing like some best of the decade list or like best of the year list for 2010. And he put The Suburbs by Arcade Fire on his list as one of his favorite albums. So it's pretty clear as an indicator that Trivium want this next album to be different. And on top of that, we get another producer coming into the mix. So we're now bringing Colin Richardson in to produce this record. So if you're into metal, you obviously know this guy's work. And I asked Mike to pick 3 favorite albums that he did production work on. So I'm letting him go first.
Okay. So the 3 that I chose, I kind of had to go with Bullet for My Valentine, Scream, Aim, Fire, because even though later albums I'm not so hot on, that was released at a time where I really was into that band. The second one, this is an album I haven't heard in a while, but I thought I'd throw a shout out to Rise to Remain's City of Vultures.
Which is era appropriate.
Yeah. Had to get one at least close to this album's release. And for the third one, I will go with Devil Driver's The Fury of Our Maker's Hand.
Which, full honesty, guys, is an off-air pick. That was going to be mine, but Mike ended up taking mine. So I made a last-minute change to mine just so that way it'd be... It's mainly staying in the 90s, my picks, for whatever reason. So I ended up picking Burn My Eyes by Machine Head, Heartwork by Carcass, and Bloodthirst by Cannibal Corpse as my 3 favorite Colin Richardson records. So the guy has pedigree to his name, clearly. Like, the guy knows how to make an album still have dirt under its nails, but like give it the polish that it needs to where the instruments come through clearly and the performances are well captured. So with the preamble about who's behind the record out of the way, Mike, I've got a different take than you on In Waves. So why don't you say like your kind of general thoughts on the album and then ask for mine?
So my general thoughts on the album, first of all, just to get this part out of the way, what we are covering is the special edition, because to me, listening to the standard version is like watching the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman or the theatrical cut of Daredevil. You want an album to feel more complete, and that's how I feel the special edition is, with the bonus tracks that are not just thrown at the end, but actually mixed in with the track list on the main album for a more complete experience. Now, Nick, you had a different take than me, so what are your thoughts on In Waves?
So I'll be fully honest. 2011 to 2012 Nick's take on this album, I was not a crazy fan of In Waves when it came out.
Move this man!
I really wanted Trivium to do another album in the style of Shogun, considering like that was, my super huge, I was really huge into mainly thrash metal and prog metal towards the end of high school. That was what I was mainly preferring Trivium to keep doing. And I didn't really understand why they'd want to go and make an ascendancy, I'm going to say, I hate using this word, but an adjacent sounding album but just end up doing all these artistic risks that I wasn't sure how to feel about when I initially heard it. So it didn't click with me aside from isolated moments. But now that we have 10 albums under this band's belt, now that we understand the grand scheme of things, them talking about in interviews how they basically couldn't continue as a band had they not gotten In Waves out of their system, I've really developed a greater appreciation for this record. But the one thing that didn't help me, and you already touched on it, I wanted to save it for this point, is the way I first heard it was the standard edition. And I would not use Batman versus Superman as I would use a much better movie as an example than this. But for me, the original 13-track album just felt kind of disjointed to me. And it just didn't end up clicking with me. So again, we're covering the deluxe edition because if you're asking us as fans, this is the definitive way to hear In Waves. It is a 16-track album, and I came up with an analogy that you weren't sure you were going to get, but Mike, this is kind of Trivium's equivalent of Machine Head's The Burning Red.
Yeah, so when I heard this, when Nick told me about this off air, I'm like, I want to hear him out because I kind of see where he's coming from.
It's not like they're making a full-blown new metal album. I'm not saying that for anybody who's going to put words in my mouth I never said. No, it's not Trivium doing that. It's just that it's a stylistic shift after critically acclaimed albums that kind of informed the rest of their catalog. Originally was divisive back in the day and kind of just goes with an approach of you're either along for the ride or you're absolutely put off by it, and just kind of an anything goes idea.
So hearing that now, I fully understand the comparison, and I actually do kind of get on board with it.
Well, also, I'm going to tie this into the album art because much like the Burning Reds cover, I have no idea what the hell we're looking at.
Honestly, me neither.
If it's anything from the 7-8 minute music video for a 5-minute song, it's supposed to be this spaceship hovering above Earth that I'm not fully sure of what I'm supposed to be looking at. But again, Matt's getting really huge into art at this point, so I mean, it could be something like that contributing to that. Like, that's why Matt cut his hair for this album, was that he just wanted to do things very against the grain and do something absolutely different from anything that they had kind of done in the past. Like, yeah, it's still in that ascendancy vein, that ascendancy kind of riffing, but this time it's tuned to E flat. And then in this case, it's them I don't want to say simplifying again, because I just used the Burning Red comparison, more kind of taking Ascendancy's approach to riffing rather than what they were doing on Shogun, which was so technically demanding.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate description.
But before we really tear into the track list, there is one cool thing Trivium did for the promotion for In Waves prior to its release. And it's included on the deluxe edition of the CD. So you can watch the making of documentary, which is really cool to see how their approach to that was, let's make it all black and white, have basically no music aside from like the acoustic guitar refrain from all these yesterdays, and just have this weird kind of dark industrial ambiance throughout most of the footage we're looking at. But also included is a live DVD called Live from Chapman Studios. But here's the catch, kids. This is not a traditional live album. It's really them just performing these songs live in a studio and playing a set of songs they might maybe kind of sort of play on tour.
It's a really cool little, I wouldn't even really call it a live show, more just a hey, we're the band, we're just gonna jam for a few songs.
Well, it is also kind of like what Metallica did for when they put Saint Anger out, is that they had a live DVD come with it, with them playing that album in its entirety. So it's kind of that mindset, but in this case, it's just them playing a lot of the major In Wave songs, and then they'll chuck something like The Deceived in there, or they'll throw Down with the Sky in there, or Suffocating Sight, or Ember to Inferno, which we sampled in the first episode. So honestly, the thing that kind of makes this great is just how gritty, like, their live show just kind of translates through what we're watching. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I also just like the arrangements on these tracks. Like we talked about Ember to Inferno already, but I also really like what they do for Suffocating Sight.
I kind of prefer that version of that song more than I do The Deceived.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, for some reason, the guitar solo just, without that extra little bit of oomph during the solo section, it doesn't gel with me, but I mean, Down from the Sky basically sounds perfect.
And I like how Matt does screaming for like the second verse.
Yeah, that part was badass. That was really cool. So it was them really just going like, let's just do everything kind of against the grain and just be like, let's make an album we really want to make. And I guess on that note, we might as well just start tearing into the track listing, which I'm going to be honest, I cannot hear the title track without, like, obviously we're going to start with the intro and everything as is, but for real, I can't listen to In Waves without hearing Capsizing the Sea as the intro.
Same. Anytime I'm just like putting on Trivium's discography on shuffle, if the intro comes up next, I take it off shuffle and I just let it go right to In Waves.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the perfect hype up intro for an album too, considering this is Trivium's longest gap between albums at this point, so it perfectly gets you amped up to eventually hear the title track, which honestly, this intro is so good, like we were just saying. It just leads straight into a fucking Trivium staple. There is just so much power coming out of the title track's riff that it drives the song home.
It really does. And I'm going to sprinkle my questions about your first Trivium concert.
Save that for the end, man. I'm going to jump in and be like, we'll save when I saw them for the end, because I wouldn't see them until like at least, I want to say 6 months after this had already come out. I will at least comment on like every time I've seen them live. I'll let you ask me about that.
Okay, then I will end this song by saying this. Every time I listen to In Waves, I just picture what a live setting would look like.
So the first time I would have seen them live, this was how they would basically walk on stage. They would drop the Capsizing the Sea intro on, have that come on the PA, and then right as it's about to start, you see Matt, Corey, Paulo, and Nick walk on stage. They go to their respective spots you're used to seeing them in from like live footage you would have watched on YouTube, and they just launch right into the song. And then just immediately after this album, it's usually what they would close the show with. And literally, as soon as that intro is done, everybody loses their fucking minds. Like, as soon as I know what's coming up next, I start headbanging ridiculously. Like, I'm like full putting my neck into it, put your full body into it, jump up and fucking down it and go crazy. Because, man, just to mainly focus more on the song, the way it throws you right into the verses, which are just as catchy as Matt screaming In Waves on repeat. Corey getting an awesome guitar solo, followed by what I can only call as an extra verse before Matt gets his own solo, and then it just pulverizes you with the chorus one more time. And usually during Capsizing the Sea, by the way, he'll make everybody do a slip knot during Spit It Out and get down on the ground. And then as soon as In Wave starts, everybody starts jumping up and down. Like, it's kind of a perfect album opener and a show closer. Like, anytime I go to the gym and I'm blasting Trivium, it's usually Pull Harder, then In Waves finishes my time at the gym.
Nice.
But no, this is just one of those perfect Trivium songs that I pretty much have no complaints about. It's just bizarre how the next song was what was released as promo online for the record.
Yeah, so the next track is Inception of the End, which is definitely it retains a little bit of like the progressive energy that Shogun had, at least in like in the tempo, and not so much the riff itself. The riff is very ascendancy coded.
Yeah, it's them playing in E flat standard tuning, but then drop down to D. So D flat tuning, basically. The twin lead work is really good. This is our first appearance of blast beats on a Trivium record, because I don't know any of the bands that Nick Augusto was in before Trivium. I know that he was in a lot of grind bands and tech deathy type stuff that Matt said in interviews, but this is really the first time we get to see blast beats in a Trivium song on a full length, not on a one-off single for an EP. More on that in a minute.
Yeah.
But the section, the We Start These Fires parts, really starts to show where they start to experiment on the record, taking what worked on Ascendancy in this new tuning and just going like, okay, well, let's throw blast beats into the mix. It is showing what Trivium has done in the past. It does retain it. I wouldn't say it keeps what worked on Shogun necessarily, but yeah, it just was bizarre to hear this after the title track and just me going like, this is the new direction we're going in. But now in hindsight, I'm like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. But I do agree. At the time, it was a little bit like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, it's another bizarre case of let's just kind of take an anything and everything goes approach to songwriting, which is perfectly shown off in the next song, Dusk Dismantled, which also I do have a bit of a funny story. I was never a Twitter user, really, aside from joining to dunk on Chris Brown from Crapped. But apparently, back in the day when this album was coming out, Paulo got on Twitter before it became the right-wing cesspool of fascist garbage called X. He tweeted out to get fans to tweet at Roadrunner Records to release this song in advance of the album.
I get it, because this song is just it's heavy, it's right to the point, and it just belts your face off.
Well, the older I get, the more I start really liking this tune. I have heard it live too, by the way. But honestly, I think this was the first time too. Again, this is the anything goes approach coming into play. This is the first time Trivium have used exclusively growling on a song. It almost could be Trivium's black metal song, especially the way the guitars start churning towards the end of it, and then the acoustic guitars appear on top of the tremolo picking. Like you said, it's a very short and fast song, but maybe that's what threw me off back in the day, was just more being into melodic death metal and thrash and not being as much into more like traditional death metal at that point, or not having gotten into black metal yet.
Speaking of which, we may have to save this for later, but when did Matt start becoming friends with Ishan?
I think around the time of this album, because they started playing Vakken, so guaranteed they probably met each other around this time period.
Okay. I wanted to ask that because the acoustic section towards the end of Dusk Dismantled does start to make a little bit more sense.
Well, also just it does kind of appear as a bit of a motif throughout the majority of this record. But I guess with that out of the way, our next song, Watch the World Burn, I actually think this is a better version of what they did on Inception of the End.
I would actually kind of have to agree.
Just for me, I like the chorus a lot more here. The lead work is about as infectious as the chorus is. So like it kind of acts like as one of those kind of guitar melodies that you would sing along to in a live environment. The chorus is very simple, but it also shows off Matt's singing ability really well. One bit of a cheeky note I left on it was I feel like this is a better version of what As I Lay Dying would end up doing on their album at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel like the chorus is just like, hey, As I Lay Dying's working on a new record. And, this is long before all the prison bullshit was about to happen. Maybe they had access to their depth. Hey, they would have been friends during this time period. So, hey, maybe they got a hold of some of As I Lay Dying's demos for what would end up being Awakened. And we're just like, nah, we can do this better.
The one tiny thing I like about the Chapman Studios version compared to the studio version is the very opening note. I like that little double kick that starts the song in the Chapman version, but otherwise, this is still just a very solid tune with Matt showing off just how great of a clean vocalist he can be.
Well, just as a bit of useless trivia for this song, it also happens to be the only song on the album to get a more traditional music video. In this case, it just ended up being pretty much just a We're on Tour video.
Which is always still a fun video to have.
But at the same time, it's just so commonplace now.
Yeah.
I guess just to include some more useless trivia, in this case, our next song was supposed to get a music video that tied up the story from the other two singles for this album, but it just, I don't know what the hell would have happened to the video for this. Was it just pushing the budget with Roadrunner Records at this point? I don't know.
It could be, but this song is black.
And this is also Trivium being radiotastic as hell because, oh my god, it's very chorus heavy.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same time, it works a lot better than a lot of metalcore bands, which again, to be clear, Trivium is not a goddamn metalcore band. But at the same time, like, we're talking about the era where even Asking Alexandria was getting on Jimmy Kimmel, for fuck's sakes. So, at least a song like this has the nerve to have a D-beat section and has growling on top of it. I do really like the song, but like, aside from hearing it on the tour promoting the album, I honestly don't revisit it nearly as much as other songs on the record.
Yeah, I think I was only really listening to the song like on repeat during the album cycle. This isn't one that I go back to regularly, but compared to even like some later songs on this record, I still enjoy it. I think I like it a little bit more than Built to Fall, which we'll get to.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of bite my tongue there, but this is where I just go, now we're entering where Nick goes, best song on the album.
Yeah, no, it has to be a Skyline Severance.
Well, it's either the title track or this. It's kind of a huge toss-up for me, but yeah, this has just become one of my absolute favorite Trivium songs in the last 5 years, I want to say. For me, it does what Dusk Dismantled did, but better. Like, it focuses more on dedicating time to the riff, having amazing vocals on top of it. Like, the growling sounds amazing on top of everything. Plenty of double bass, plenty of thrash beats, and the chorus is growled perfectly. But then all of a sudden, about like 2-ish minutes in, this is where we got to drop a sample in here just because it drops you into this awesome mosh pit worthy groove right now. And all of it just feels a lot more seamless songwriting wise for me. Like, the solos, again, they just have a lot more time to breathe and leave an impression on you before it continues melting your face off with more riffage. I love this tune, dude. Like, I was honestly lucky enough to hear it live for the first time 3 years ago, and it went down in a storm.
Nice. Yeah, everything you said about this song is true. I'm hesitating to call it a masterpiece because Trivium has a lot of masterpieces, but compared to the rest of this album, it has more to offer.
Well, it's just one of those songs to me. It's proving the concept that I now fully understand, where they can do one song that's dedicated purely to clean vocals, one song that's purely dedicated to growling, but then we have another song that does both, but just has all these different dynamics going on with it, along with the art direction that they're doing. It's where it's starting more and more to click with me. But this is where we get into our point about the deluxe edition of the album. So if you listen to the standard version, going from this to Built to Fall, it feels really goddamn jarring.
It feels like going from Skyline to Built to Fall is like pretty much just landing right in your face, where with Ensnare the Sun, you get to gently float down.
Yeah, like as lame as a lot of, let's just say, atmospheric interludes can be, Trivium really did it well here. I mean, like, again, we're already half an hour into this record, and you would think that throwing an interlude halfway in would just, kind of deflate the flow. But, like, we just had our faces melted off for the last, 27-ish minutes. It kind of lures you into this false sense of security. It builds an atmosphere and a tone that stays consistent throughout the rest of the record. And I really think having it be a pure acoustic interlude gives it that unsettling vibe.
Oh, yeah. And it even kind of builds up in the tempo, too. It's not like a static interlude. It gets ramped up and gets you ready for the next track.
Which Built to Fall is absolutely, say it with us, kids, the dying in your arms of the album. But if I'm honest, if you have Ensnare the Sun before this song, again, it does not feel jarring. But this also is radio-tastic as all bloody hell, and that can be going from a pure melodic death metal type song into a radio-tastic song can be kind of jarring, but also I really understand why this got picked as a single.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just sounds like a radio single, even more so than Black.
Like the lyrics on here, I'm gonna compare it to This World Can't Tear Us Apart, because at least here it feels emotionally earned. It shows off more great guitar work. It undeniably gets in your head immediately, but also it has the nerve to throw growling on top of the final chorus, has some great solos in it. There's not a lot to scoff at it from the musical standpoint.
And that's the thing that we've been stressing since the very beginning. There are no bad Trivium records. And B, even the songs that are not our favorites, they're still packed with all the musicianship of this band.
Exactly. And then I don't really have a great way to segue out of the last track other than Caustic or The Ties That Bind is the next track. This is the one that honestly reminded me the most of Ascendancy, especially the first two verses and choruses. Those in particular scream Ascendancy influenced.
Yeah, it's really mostly in the first half with that opening riff and the pre-chorus. But then we get to the second half when things take a different turn.
Yeah, and I can't call this a ballad just because of all the growling and double bass and guitar solos that we've had, but this honestly might be the closest we've had Trivium come to writing a ballad. And initially when I first heard it, I thought it was way too jarring for its own good, but it's another one of those tracks that grows on you the more you hear it. I mean, I even mentioned this to you before we started recording. I would listen to this on my iPod back in the day, and the way I would listen to it would be the 10 songs that they played live. And I guess that's what made me start to appreciate it more, was just that, well, I've heard it live, so I gotta, give it a bunch of more listens to appreciate it, right?
Yeah. No, I get that. And this is another one of those songs that over time it's grown on me to the point where I can legitimately call it one of my favorites.
I mean, it even has the nerve to let Corey show off a great solo before throwing you back into the chorus one last time. Like, here's my cheeky note that I'm expecting you to laugh at least a little bit, Mike. It almost feels like Trivium really wanted to do a better version of Seize the Day by Avenged Sevenfold.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid to go a bit below the belt there, but I think they did the job.
Yeah.
They passed the assignment, but then we get into another. This is one that I'm kind of just amazed that they have not played live a lot outside of the touring behind this record.
Yeah, so the next track is Forsake Not the Dream, which is another song that has a blast beat in it.
Oh, just going through the entire structure of this song, dude, like the way the riff is played through a clean channel for the first chunk of it before it goes off the rails, the way that's just all structured and set up and built up, I think that's killer. But then the growling just is like perfectly timed with the verses. Matt singing on top of the chorus flows together like seamlessly and works super well. The riff before the solo section is amazing. Like, it just kind of keeps that energy going throughout the 4.5 minute song. But then it just launches into that blast beat section on top of just keeping the pit going. It's one of those cases where I think this is where Nick Augusto really gets to put his stamp on a Trivium record. And again, having the last 30 seconds be pure melodic death metal, it's a pure chef's kiss moment.
Lots of kudos have to go to Nick for this.
Again, us fellow Nicks, we know what the fuck we're doing.
Exactly.
But then we get into another one of our bonus tracks, but again, deluxe edition. This is the way you need to be hearing the album, because Drowning in Slow Motion it's one of those songs, again, that I don't know why I do not listen to this thing more, because it kind of flows perfectly out of Forsake Not the Dream.
Yeah, which is honestly why I'm confused why this one in particular was not on the standard edition, because it just feels like it belongs there.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of great double bass drumming on it. The growls are killer. The chorus, it feels like it's weaving in bits of the churning part of Dusk Dismantled. And this is just one of those that it's just catchy as all bloody hell. Like, this is one of those songs that I'm going to be jamming a lot more, just because that balance of how heavy it is and how melodic it is, it just works for me so well.
It's that balance, which is just why I love this band so much. They can do that and not get like lost in one style. They're just too talented to screw up that style.
But I guess my next question is, has Trivium done 2 Dying in Your Arms styled songs on the same album?
I guess there's a first time for everything, which leads us into A Gray So Dark.
Yeah, I don't have very much to say about this song. Is that this is one of the purely clean vocal styled songs, like even more than Built to Fall was. And I guess it makes sense given the album's kind of anything goes attitude. But off air, this is what I just remember that makes the song make a lot more sense in hindsight. Matt Heafy was in the music video for All I Want by A Day to Remember.
Yeah, that was a good observation. Something that I took away from this song is it kind of foreshadows the direction that Silence in the Snow would take.
I wouldn't go that far, because I think a lot of Silence in the Snow is heavier than this. But I guess on that note, just to give us way more to talk about, let's hop into the next song, which I'm about to ruin the title of this song for you, Mike. Do you want to know what Chaos Reigns is a reference to?
Enlighten me.
In Lars von Trier's Antichrist, Willem Dafoe finds a dead fox that comes back to life, and it says Chaos Reigns.
Given what Matt was into at the time, yeah, that adds up.
Yeah, we're officially referencing a movie where a woman takes scissors to her genitals. Let's just leave that conversation at that, not talk about Antichrist anymore, but let's talk about a song that's really fucking heavy.
Yeah, no, this song is a face melter.
Oh, it's in the vein of Skyline, Severance, and Dusk Dismantled. Again, there's still tons of really good riffs. It's got a lot more groove to the riffs, but on top of that, the thrash drumming on... Again, you got to appreciate a fellow Nick for having the nerve to drop blast beats in here. I mean, this really is Trivium doing a melodic death metal song.
I mean, yeah, doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, and if someone were to tell me about a song called Chaos Reigns, this is about what I'd expect it to sound like.
Same.
And with that, we're officially at our closing track of all these yesterdays. And this, to me, this is another one that's really grown on me on re-listens. This really feels like Trivium doing an Opeth-style ballad as their closing number. And in hindsight, given everything we've just heard, I actually really like it.
Yeah, as a closer, this is like the best way to end this album with everything that they've done before, taking like their heavier Ascendancy style, but mixing in more indie rock elements. And as you mentioned, Opeth, it ends the album on like a nice melodic, but still powerful note.
Yeah, like the way the chord progression during the We Are Too Far Gone refrain, I just really like the way that refrain sounds. Just the it makes you feel like you're about to be going away somewhere. It kind of gives me that kind of a vibe. Like it almost feels like I will actually throw you a bone and say this feels a bit more like Shogun to me, just in that the way the title track has that cleanly played section in the middle of the song, it kind of feels like, okay, let's take some notes from that track and apply it to a 4-minute song.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And really, it is the perfect note to close this album out on. And considering that this was the Trivium album that came out during my last year of high school, it kind of feels like it ends on the note of congratulations, you've entered adulthood.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe how this song kind of ends.
So I do have one... I don't want this to be perceived as a complaint, but I guess it's something that I kind of pick up on. So in the making of documentary and some promo stuff that's not on YouTube anymore, unfortunately, but Matt also does solo charity shows on the side from Trivium. Like if he's doing something for Twitch, he will go do something as like promo for another stream. And he will do this song, but purely acoustic. And he will do stuff like Harvest by Opeth. He'll do Depeche Mode songs. He'll do really weird, eclectic stuff that's great. But the way it sounds just purely acoustically, I wish they had gone full Opeth and just done it purely as an acoustic ballad to finish off the record.
With or without percussion?
That is tough. I mean, Opeth did it on Damnation and on Harvest and on A Fair Judgment off of their earlier records, so I guess it would just be up to Matt Heafy at the end of the day.
Fair enough.
But this just brings us to our outro, Leaving This World Behind, and really, it does kind of perfectly end the record as a nice little outro to just be like, look back on this entire hour-long album you listened to.
Yeah, and you kind of put this image in my head of, as this outro is playing, I just picture the band saying goodbye to the audience and walking off set.
Well, don't forget, too, I mean, they go back to the musical motif from Dusk Dismantled, the churning guitar bit. It mainly focuses on the acoustic guitars before it just eventually just cuts out. Which normally I'm kind of mixed on albums just ending, but given the album's more artistic and anything goes approach, it kind of works to its advantage.
In a traditional album, this would do like the fade out, but I don't know, I kind of like how different this one sounds.
And I guess on that note, we are now entering the actual bonus tracks, not just stuff that was cut from the record and counted in the middle of it as bonus tracks. We're going to really only count these two as bonus tracks, but if I'm being honest, Shattering the Skies Above might be one of my top 5 Trivium songs.
It's hard to disagree. And so for those who don't know, this was supposed to be part of, or it is part of I think it was the God of War 3 soundtrack.
Yeah, there was an EP called Blood and Metal that Killswitch Engage did a song for, Dream Theater did a song for, which this was actually the last thing Mike Portnoy recorded before he would end up leaving the band, and even Opeth did a song for this EP, so it was pretty much all stuff curated by Roadrunner Records, just handpicking artists to do songs for the, at the time, new God of War game, and it's a goddamn masterpiece. I mean, for one, I really love the riff on it, just the groove it has, where it does have that ascendancy feel to it, but it's just so goddamn heavy. And just the way the twin leads are right before the verse, then it launches you into the chorus. It just has so much power to it. Matt sells this chorus so goddamn well. And considering this was the first thing that we had heard post Shogun, letting Nick Augusto do plenty of blast beats and double bass on top of it too, musically and lyrically, it's just incredible. And it really does make you feel like you're a badass like Kratos in God of War 3.
Oh yeah, like you said, this was my first introduction to Nick on the drums, and wow, is it a great first impression.
Well, the fact that we're just going to drop a sample of the chorus so you guys can understand, because the way the blast beats, the way the intense drumming is thrown on top of the chorus, like I always like to say, I love when bands show off their talent and what they're capable of on their instruments. So just have a listen to this and you guys are going to understand. It's an infectious chorus that really is great for screaming along to in the gym. I mean, because I can't not bring up Trivium songs to blast in the gym. This one absolutely needs to be one of them, guys. It's an absurdly heavy song that really isn't just one of my favorite Trivium deep cuts. It's one of my favorite songs by them, period. And I don't think there's a better time to mention this, but considering I'm the guy who's seen Trivium and met them as many times as I have, the last time I met them 3 years ago, it was pretty close to my birthday, so I kept my expectations a bit tempered because they probably had their set list already planned, but I just said, guys, so it's only about a week away from my birthday. Can you play Shattering the Skies Above for me? They at least humored me and they were like, we would play it, but we've already got our set planned out and like the lighting cues and everything. And I was like, okay, I get it.
Have they ever played it live before?
They've played it a lot, but mainly like in Europe, or just if they decide to do like oddball set lists where they just play anything.
I actually can see this song like doing better in Europe than perhaps in the States, just because it has a little bit more like that mellow death quality to it.
song, but at the same time, I'm like, fuck everybody else's feelings. I want my twin leads. I want my blast beats. I want my double kicks. I want my growling. I want my choruses that don't sound whiny. I mean, I would disagree. I would see this going down in a storm the way, dare I say it, the way Imperium by Machine Head goes down live.
Fair enough.
But our last bonus track for the evening and our last track before we hop into our best songs. So Slave New World, which is obviously a Sepultura cover. This is where, obviously, given that during all of our other covers that Trivium have done, we go over what we feel about the original. So, Mike, Slave New World by Sepultura.
I'll be honest, this is one of those Sepultura songs I don't really go back to too often. So I can't remember the last time I heard the original. I just know that when Trivium gets their hands on it, they do exactly what they do best.
So, to be clear, I love Sepultura. And honestly, when I was getting into their music in high school, I mainly stuck with the Max Cavalera albums, which, as an off-topic tangent, was a dumb decision because the Derek Green era has so many gems on it to the point where I go, this is exciting me a lot more than what Max is doing lately. A lot of people aren't going to like that I said that, but deal with it. I'm not excited by him going back and re-recording old albums to rehash the glory days. So Chaos AD in the grand scheme of things, like considering I love Beneath the Remains and Arise as much as I do, and really loving Refuse Resist as a song, Chaos AD, it took me a bit more time to really love that album, kind of like In Waves in a way, but the original Slave New World, it's a solid hardcore punk tune in the context of that record. It has a lot of groove and intensity to it. And I mean, how can you not scream along to We're Not Slaves, We're Free before launching into that riff? So in hindsight, this cover, considering it was something that they would play actively during the Shogun tour, it does feel like a blueprint for what they would do on this record.
Yeah, no, it really does.
I mean, musically, it's very faithful to the original, like the Master of Puppets cover was, but it doesn't do what the Iron Maiden cover does, where the deviations from the original really elevate it for me. It's a good cover, just I would say I prefer the Master of Puppets cover and the Iron Maiden cover to this one.
I think that's fair. I would go Iron Maiden, then kind of tied right below that is Master of Puppets and Slave New World.
Well, considering the next album has as many covers on it as it does, I'll throw you some leeway, but I will actually let you go first for best songs.
Okay, so best songs. Obviously, I have to pick In Waves because it's In Waves. Then I would go A Skyline Severance, or Caustic Are the Ties That Bind, Drowning in Slow Motion, and Dust Dismantled.
Okay, so I think it's going to line up with mine. So obviously, title track absolutely needs to be there. Watch the World Burn, Skyline Severance, Forsake Not the Dream, Chaos Reigns, Of All These Yesterdays, and if we want to throw bonus tracks in there, really, Shattering the Skies Above and Drowning in Slow Motion.
Yeah.
So I guess with that out of the way, just the way they decided to promote this album, man, did they hop on the best tours? Because, Mike, you said you've never gotten to see Trivium live, but, like, I've told you about how badass some of these lineups are.
Yeah, out of all the lineups that they did around this time, which one would you say is, like, the best?
I don't know if I would say, like, lineups necessarily, but the way they really ramped up touring behind this record was, I believe Disturbed took them out on the Music as a Weapon tour with, believe it or not, As I Lay Dying, again, pre-attempted spousal murder. But then Trivium end up hopping on the 2011 Mayhem Festival, which this, honestly, guys, this might be the most formative tour to my music taste. I mean, when you have Deathclock, Machine Head, Trivium, obviously, In Flames, Hatebreed on select dates, All Shall Perish, Unearth, Kingdom of Sorrow. When you have all of those bands on one lineup on top of like a lot of the mainstreamy stuff like Disturbed and Godsmack that I would have been listening to back in the day, this really is the perfect lineup to get somebody into heavier music with.
Yeah, that is like, for 2011, that is pretty perfect a lineup.
Oh, and the fact that they pretty much had that lineup be one of the days at Heavy Montreal in 20, like that was the way I first heard of Heavy Montreal. Back when our satellite TV station, they would pick up signals from the Maritimes. So we would get ads for stuff out in Quebec. We would get ads for stuff out, like events happening in the Montreal area. And one of those was Heavy Montreal and Heavy Toronto. And just seeing a lineup being promoted with all of the bands from Mayhem Fest, but then on the second day, you would have Opeth, Morbid Angel, Motorhead, Anthrax, Children of Bodom, Devil Driver, Gore Guts. Like, that's pretty fucking incredible.
Oh, yeah. So I do kind of have to ask you some live questions, because you said this was the album cycle where you got to see them for the first time live.
Yes. So it was Trivium opening for In Flames, and then the other two openers were Veil of Maya and King. Me and my high school best friend at the time, we really wanted to go to this show, but we weren't as familiar with King, but we were willing to go check Veil of Maya out. So, and just bear in mind, this was a sold out show for 2012. So we went to, it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it was called the Edmonton Event Center. It was in West Edmonton Mall. So it was like in this weird spot tucked in between a bowling alley where you had to go wait outside and then go into the venue and wait line that way. But then there were these giant pillars in the middle of the floor that people would climb up during songs, and then they would jump down and crowd surf into. And then they obviously had a balcony. So for me, because I wasn't 18 at the time, security just had one look at my ID and was like, close enough. And I got to go on the floor.
Nice.
And, Veil of Maya were cool, but it was really, we all knew who we were there for. It was for In Flames and for Trivium.
Of course.
And I guess with that in mind, I might as well finally tell you what the fuck they even played, because, oh my god, this was kind of bizarre, because again, I was still in that mindset of I wanted more Shogun. So the fact that the last two songs were Shogun songs, it was like, okay, I have to wait through Gems, but I'm also like, it's kind of in a bizarre order. So they obviously walked on to Capsizing the Sea, then they went straight into In Waves, and considering I'm growing my hair out at this point, little 17-year-old Nick is just, he's just giving it. Like, I'm even making adults next to me who are watching the show, they're like, this kid's losing his shit right now. So immediately after that, this is the bizarre choice, that Pull Harder was the next song. Yeah, it wasn't the closer. So then after that, it's Black, Forsake Not the Dream, Departure, Built to Fall, Like Light to the Flies, Caustic Are the Ties That Bind, Down from the Sky, and Throes of Perdition to close things out.
Honestly, that's a pretty good set list right there.
I'll be fully honest, the next time I've seen them, that's the set list that you'd want to have seen. But to be honest, just in hindsight, given it gives you, it's half In Wave stuff and half old stuff. So it is, in hindsight, a fairish balance, but it's all pretty huge melodic stuff that they're throwing in there. But, the most memory I have of that show is just after Built to Fall, Matt hyping the crowd up and then going straight into Like Light to the Flies.
Nice.
That was what 17-year-old Nick needed to hear. That was what I came there to see. And In Flames were really good too. Like, this is off topic from Trivium, but just one of my core memories of that show that I remember the most was In Flames save Take This Life as the last song. They don't, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. I'm going to be seeing them tomorrow night at the time of this recording, so they're actually playing it as like the second or third song in. But no, so they're saving that as the last song. But like I mentioned, in the middle of the pit is this giant pillar holding the building together. And right now, so Anders pauses the show and says to everybody, all right, we're going to play Take This Life, but sir, I see you climbing up that pillar right now. You got to climb up it, and as soon as, Bjorn, play the riff, as soon as everybody in the band starts playing, you need to drop and everybody crowd surfs you to the front. Can you do that for us? They start playing the riff. He doesn't jump down in time, so then he's like, okay, you got to climb back up and do it again. He climbs back up. They do it again. They go straight into Take This Life.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is my main core memory from seeing Trivium open for In Flames. Like that was kind of unreal as my first metal gig, and I'm kind of bummed I didn't try to go for the rail at that point, because I'll be fully honest, I didn't know if I'd be able to handle mosh pits at that point. But then, you know, by the time I saw Metallica, by the time I had seen Soilwork, I was like, no, I'm good with this.
I can see why that show was a formative moment for you.
Hey, absolutely. And I guess I can tie that into my closing thoughts on the record, just looking back almost 50. It still terrifies me that these albums are as old as they are now, Mike.
Yeah, like we're not there yet, but in October, Silence in the Snow celebrates its 10-year anniversary.
Like, I seriously remember going to buy that album the day it came out. But I guess looking back on this album with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of knowing their entire catalog, I really have a greater appreciation for this record getting ready for this episode. I mean, just hearing the deluxe edition, the way the album, I see it as originally intended, Trivium had a vision and they committed to it and they executed it. Is it all over the place? Yeah. You could make the argument, but it does establish pretty well what they would want to do on later albums that would come after. And in that regard, it works really goddamn well. But really, if you're a dedicated ride or die fan like us, you kind of need to stay on the Trivium train to really appreciate it, because I remember back in the day this kind of being a polarizing album, and it, with, again, the benefit of hindsight, I don't think it deserved that kind of mixed reaction that it would have got.
I agree. Like, me being such a deep Trivium fan, like, by the time this album came out, like, I was going to be ride or die no matter what, but even I still had to let this album sit with me for a while, really let these songs kind of bake themselves into my subconscious. And like there are several tracks off this record that I would say are like now some of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I mean, now that we're, again, almost 15 years, next year will be the 15-year anniversary of this record. The fact that a lot of these are Trivium live staples now and fan favorites, it's kind of amazing to know that now, just with hindsight. And again, knowing that so many of these songs go down in a storm and people still get excited for it. And just the amount of people I know who this would have been their first Trivium record, like mine, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. So overall, again, going back to what I said, there are no bad Trivium records. If you're a new fan or are die-in-the-wool and just haven't listened to this one in a while, go back and give this one another shot.
Yeah, because you really do start to hear why the later records sound the way that they do. But in that meantime, we get back to our usual every 2-year gap between albums. And oh boy, I'm going to be honest, I have not listened to Vengeance Falls in its entirety in a long time.
Same. The last time I listened to that was 2 years ago when they put out a 10-year remaster, but more on that later. For now, we shall bid you adieu. Nick, where can everyone find you online?
Super Saiyan Death Metal God on Instagram. I mainly post album covers, movies I'm watching, video games I'm playing, concerts I happen to be going to. Just go shoot me a follow, shoot me some binge likes. I greatly appreciate it. I give shout outs to people who binge like my page, and I tag you and everything. And I try to pay it forward. So please go pay me forward and I pay you forward.
Indeed. And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Blue Sky at Renegade Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. You can escape, so do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Jukebox. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.